Today, I am going to talk about artificial intelligence here at the Extension Foundation, and not just, I'll talk specifically about some of the external things we're doing, Extension Bot, things like that, but also some of the things that we're doing internally too. A lot of the talks, David Warren, I think, is on the call. He's my colleague here. He works on a lot of the AI work that we do together with me. He gives talks, and up to this point, talks have almost exclusively been on Extension Bot, and we're going to talk a lot about Extension Bot today. That's the sort of result of everything we do is sort of being poured into Extension Bot at this point. But there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes, data gathering, other things like that, that are that are really decoupled from Extension Bot. So I just wanted, this is going to be, I hope it'll be a little more broad talk about all the AI work we're doing in general. So that's sort of what I have in the hopper for us. I just threw this in as I saw this last week and I thought it was great. The term AI was used, and rather than artificial intelligence, they used the term augmented intelligence. And I said, man, I love that. I'm going to include that in my talk. And I don't know if this will be a thing to come. Like, I would love it if the industry as a whole maybe stopped using artificial intelligence and started using augmented intelligence. Anything that's artificial, generally we don't like, right? We live, especially the last, well, I guess maybe it's always been that way. Anything that's artificial, whether it's food or a food additive or something, is generally bad. So, artificial intelligence is not, I don't think, is always the best coined phrase for the work we're doing, but I love this augmented intelligence because that really, the subtitle here is aims to improve human intelligence and capabilities rather than replace it. And that's exactly what I think AI is, and it's going to be. I think there's going to be some edge cases where, yeah, some people probably will lose their jobs because of AI, but the vast majority of us, it's just going to augment the work that we're already doing, right? So I just wanted to throw this in, and maybe we'll start a trend here. Rather than talking about artificial intelligence, let's start talking about augmented intelligence. Okay, so the first couple of slides here, we always like to throw some basics of AI in. And before I do that, let me go back. This is Athena, my little logo meme mascot, if you will, I have here. I feel like anytime a project starts, I like to have it's just good to have a mascot or a logo or something there to sort of encapsulate the work we're doing. This is actually courtesy of Dolly helped me create this, which is an AI image generation tool. When sort of I prompted it to, I said, I want something like wizard-like, and I think I said I want the gender to be sort of general neutral, and then I gave it prompts about farming and agriculture. And so this is what it came up with. So this is Athena is what I'm calling them, I'll just say. And I think Athena in Greek or something like that is like new or innovative or something like that is a sort of root meaning. So I don't know, that's Athena. Okay, let's talk about a few basics of AI sorts of things. So just a good general, just to sort of lay the groundwork for when we talk about AI, any technology that exhibits facets of human intelligence, right? AI is nothing new. All of us have been using AI for probably a decade or more now, probably more like 15 or even 20 years. I mean, when you look at things as simple as spam filters inside your email, that's AI. Motion detection in your door cam, all those things are AI. So AI has been with us for a long time. We've all been using it in all facets of our life. It's only the last few years, really, since ChatGPT broke, fall of 2020, I think, that things have really ramped up and it's sort of come more into sort of public consciousness. But we've all been using AI for a long time now. This sort of encapsulates, I like this image because, you've got this larger umbrella up top here of artificial intelligence, and then, machine learning, deep learning. We're not going to get in the weeds of what those things are, but those are sort of specific areas of artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence that are within AI. And then you can see generative AI is sort of down at the bottom here. And of course, that's your ChatGPT, Gemini, a lot of those tools. We'll hear the term generative AI. Conversational AI is a term I like too. So really anything around language, writing, those sorts of things are sort of under this heading of generative or conversational AI. So what happened? This is a bar graph. I want to thank David Warren. I think he's on this call. I want to thank him too because I stole a bunch of his slides. We work fairly closely on a lot of the AI work the foundation does, and we both give all kinds of talks, all kinds of folks, and so we try and share our slides amongst one another. And so I want to give him credit for a lot of the slides you'll see here. This is a bar graph. You can see along the bottom is the time frame. So it started in 2020, or I'm sorry, 2010, and then goes through 2020, and then going up along the left side, or as going from the bottom to the top, this is the number in thousands of patents that have been filed in the artificial intelligence space. And you can see it really ramps up 2018, 2019, 2020. And again, that's around the time that ChatGPT broke and really brought AI into the public consciousness more and just created all the buzz. And, the Extension Foundation, sometimes it's one of those things, better to be lucky than good. I mean, I think we are good, but we were also lucky too. We had a chatbot project already in place that we actually started around 2018. I'll credit Chris Geith, our previous CEO, for that. She sort of pushed us to look in that space. This was, again, prior to ChatGPT. And again, the lucky part of that was, around the time that ChatGPT broke and it really, there was a lot of buzz. We already had a project in place, and we were able to quickly sort of take that current project, the contractors we were working with, and pivot in such a way that we could capitalize on some of the buzz that was starting to form around AI and artificial intelligence. And yeah, you can see a big spike there really fast. So what makes LLMs work? We're not going to get too far in the technical weeds, although this may be a little technical, maybe than what most of you all are used to, but I think it'll be good for you, and hopefully I'll do it in such a way that it's it's understandable. When we talk about LLMs, we talk about large language models, and I like to describe large language models as sort of the brains for a lot of the artificial intelligence you use. And again, specifically talking about conversational AI or generative AI, again, anything around language. And again, you can just think of if you had to encapsulate it in a sort of 2 or 3 words, it would be the brains. You can think of LLMs as the brains of generative AI. The sort of 3 bullets I've got here, these are the sort of moving parts of large language models. The first one here is transformers. You can think of transformers as the language processing part. Again, to juxtapose a Google search versus a conversational AI tool. Google search is very much just keyword based. All you're doing is based on the words you enter in a prompt and you do a search. It's just matching up the keywords and looking for results based on those keywords. The language processing part is this idea of intent, of, okay, what is the intent of the language this person is using, and then returning results based on that. GPUs is the other piece you'll see here, and that's the computing power part of this. We're probably familiar with the term CPU. We all learned probably 20 or 25 years ago, central processing unit for a laptop or a desktop computer. GPUs are similar to that. These are graphics processing units. Prior to this sort of AI boom the last few years, really gamers, folks who were heavy into gaming and they were building a gaming machine, or graphics folks, people who were doing heavy graphic editing, those sorts of things. It was sort of a specialized area of computing, and they used these GPU processors for that kind of work. But just sort of upon chance, again, this idea of better to be lucky than good. These GPUs happen to be very good at processing and building out, or I should say, training large language models on these large data sets. So the GPUs are sort of an important part of this movement. And then the last one I have is this key part of what makes large language models work is massive data sets. And again, that's really the key to all of this. When we say artificial intelligence, these tools they're not able to know this stuff out of thin air, right? They have to be really just like human beings, a human being doesn't learn anything without reading it or being trained on it or learning it from someone else. These large language models are the same way, right? They have to be fed or trained on data, and that's how they're able to give the results that they are. So that's just sort of a synopsis or a quick overview of the large language models, what they are and how they work. Okay, so let's look at the Extension Foundation. And this is sort of I like to describe, or I'm working on describing the foundation's work sort of as a stool with four legs here. And the four legs of the stool are tools and services, data gathering, education and training, and then governance. And so we'll sort of talk about each one of these. Project Warlock is sort of my internal name for this, and that's sort of a play on again, I mentioned David Warren works closely with me, so that's a conflation of our last names, Warren and Locklear. So I thought that was good, and then of course that led me to the whole Warlock mystic kind of thing. So anyway. Interesting thing about this image you'll see here. So I used DALL-E to create this image, and through prompting, the prompt that I gave it, I thought was pretty, it was a pretty good prompt. But if you'll notice, again, you may not be able to see too closely, but if you look at the legs, you'll notice that there's a bunch of gibberish that's on these legs. I asked it to create a stool for me with Extension AI on the top of the stool, and then again the tools and services, data gathering, education, governance. I wanted that text to be on each. I wanted that text to be on each leg or on one leg of each stool, and you can sort of see the result it got there. Like it got sort of close, but not so much. So that just shows there's a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of work to be done in AI, especially on the sort of graphic and image creation side of things. All right, so let's start with tools and services. And so again, I want to abstract these things out. I'm going to talk a lot about ExtensionBot here, but I want in your mind to sort of separate ExtensionBot from, again, data gathering is sort of the other core piece that we're doing. And in some ways, it's more important than ExtensionBot itself. But again, the goal here is to sort of separate this front end tool that you're seeing from the data that backs it on the back end. And I'll talk more about that as I go forward, but I just wanted to sort of set that up in your mind. So, and again, this is thinking about a lot of the external facing work that we're doing, that, the apps, so apps and tools is one large part of that. So the way that's sort of manifesting itself now is with the ExtensionBot. And then I'll talk about some integration between ExtensionBot and Ask Extension. Some of you probably know about Ask Extension. That's our national question and answer tool. And so we've got some integration. We're using some of I guess we're using some of the knowledge or service that ExtensionBot does to sort of add value to ExtensionBot. One of the key things, though, and the way I like to talk about this is very likely to change over the next 18 to 24 months, not just the work that we're doing, but just think about AI as a whole. We're really just in the infancy right now of what this technology is going to do. And I think it's one of those critical technologies that is going to be transformational. And usually, and in fact, almost always technologies like that, we don't know what it's going to look like, right? I mean, the sort of the wiring and the guts is there right now, but what the tools and services look like, we don't know what it's going to look like. So, you're probably all using tools now where you're starting to see value add in those tools. So whether it's like Microsoft 360 and then Microsoft Copilot, and there's all kinds of other tools, maybe your email composer you use, you're starting to see some AI pop up there. So more and more, we're going to see this where there's going to be completely new tools that we didn't even conceive that we might be able to use that we're going to see. But then also we're just going to see these sort of additions or value added things to the existing tools we're already using. So that's the way within the foundation I'm trying to approach a lot of the work we're doing in just that way. That again, like as an example, Ask Extension and ExtensionBot, that's just sort of the front end piece that you're using, but we're also building a lot of these back end things and building them in such a way that we can quickly pivot or change depending on what tools become available in the market, number one, And then number two, again, that value add sort of scenario where, maybe you have at your particular institution, you've got a tool that you like, you already use, where possibly the addition of extension bot, the large language model, maybe some work we're doing can be added to that tool. And again, I'll talk more about that sort of on the data gathering side. But again, these last two bullets I've got here, this idea of abstracting the apps and tools and what you see on the front end with what's going on the back end. Again, decoupled is often the word that I like to use. So you've got these decoupled systems here that gives you maximum flexibility. So again, depending on where the technology goes and how it changes, you've got the ability, or at least relatively speaking, you have the ability to quickly change. And that's opposed to sort of building this all-in-one monolith chunk of a tool that does all these things. And then if the technology changes or you need to pivot, it's very difficult to do so. So that's the tools and services part. All right, a couple of extension bot FAQs here. Let me move. See if I can change this. Okay, you all still seeing? So somebody chime in if you're not. I need to move the image out of the way so I could see all of the all the text on the screen here. Again, what is extension bot? So again, a data gathering, and let's see, David or Melanie, if you're on, if you don't mind, maybe linking to extension bot. David knows where most of those tools are. David, if you want to put something in chat so folks can actually see a live version of it, that would be great. But extension bot is basically an AI powered chat bot. When you think about Chat GPT, the explanation I like to give at least is, it's Chat GPT for the extension service, right? We have our own large language model. It's Minstrel right now, and we're training that model on extension only data. So again, think of Chat GPT being trained on the entire internet as opposed to as opposed to only being trained on extension only data. So the conversations you're having there and the responses you get are going to be based on only extension data. Who's behind it? Extension Foundation. We've been working with the EduWorks Corporation for a few years now, maybe 5, 6, 7 years. We've worked with them pretty closely on Ask Extension, and then now their AI team is building extension bot for us. So we're working with them closely on that. And then also funded by an NTA grant, which is part of USDA NEFA. Governance. I'll talk more about the governance piece. I've got a couple of slides at the end, so I'll talk more about that. Audience. So who is it for? Really for anyone. Again, this is sort of NTA, USDA NEFA funded. So it's taxpayer dollars, and so it's the people's money and it's the people's tool. So extension educators are a big part of it. So extension educators volunteer, but just also members of the anyone who's part of the any member of the public can use the tool too. Cost of extension bot, again, free to any extension service. If you want to reach out to us, I mean, we've got some documentation online. We're happy to share that with you, but happy to have a Zoom chat with anyone who'd like to implement it on their website. Participating extension services. Again, on the data gathering part, I'll talk more about. We've got about 23 institutions that we have data sets for at the moment. We've got maybe 5 or 6, I would say, institutions who actually have extension bot implemented on their website. David, I may have David share a few words at the end, but Oklahoma State is probably that they've got the sort of biggest chunk of the biggest presence, I should say, of extension bot on their website, where they've got a full screen version of the chat bot that they have implemented in addition to the widget on all of their extension pages. Okay, this slide sort of compares ChatGPT to extension bot, right? So on the left side, we see ChatGPT. This happens to be GPT-4. And then you can see extension bot over on the right side asking the same question here. Why are there brown spots in my Bermuda grass? And then you can see the responses here. So a couple things. What are the differences between these? Okay. So first, over on the right side, you can see references. If you see the numbers, we've got 1 through 3. These little numbers are citations. They look sort of similar to academic citations. And in fact, that's exactly what they are. Based on the response extension bot gives back, it also includes a link or URL to the resource it used or it based that response on. And there can be multiple. Obviously, a response can be based on multiple resources. So you can see these here. These are clickable links. You can either click on the number, or you notice we've got this learn more section down at the bottom. You can click on that and it'll actually take you to the resource that the response was based on. Notice the localization part here too. In this case, this is from Oklahoma. So you notice that it specifically mentions if you're in Oklahoma, it's important to note that. And then it goes on to sort of talk about that. So again, when we're talking about advantages over general tools like ChatGPT or Gemini, you see we've got, in addition to citations, also this localization part. I won't get real deep in the weeds on the configuration piece, but essentially the way this tool works is you can specifically configure it if you embed Extension Bot in your institution's website. You can specifically configure it to be based on your state. So the idea there's a couple things. Number one, it will, if you have a contributing data set, then it's going to be more favorable to those data sets and use resources that it finds within your state. But then, as I said, as we can see in the example here, it's going to also give you more of a localized response based on the configuration you've got for your particular state. We're also using that. I'll talk about Ask Extension, that sort of that localization piece. We're also using that in Ask Extension in that based on when a question comes into Ask Extension, depending on the state or the group that we attempt at least to give a localized response to a given question. And then answer, of course, again, the answer reflects the extension. So again, compared to a more general conversational tool like ChatGPT or Gemini, you're going to get a more specific extension sort of answer. And then also all the way at the bottom there, you can see follow-up question. We actually give a suggestion on a follow-up question or what a follow-up question might look like. Here's just a comparison of Oklahoma versus Florida. And so this really what this highlights is the differences in the configuration settings that individual institutions can have. Here again, the same question was asked. Why do I have dead spots in my Bermuda grass? Notice on the left side, these are all that's a very Oklahoma specific response that's given. And again, the references you can see in the citations only references Oklahoma State, as opposed to the Florida version of this. Notice that we've got, in the Learn More section down at the bottom, notice we've got multiple resources that have been cited. And you notice there, Clemson, North Carolina State, IPM, which I think is UC California, and then Oklahoma State, and then the EDIS, the number 5 link there. EDIS is actually Florida's link, but I'd have to go back and study more, look more at Florida's configuration. But I think what they've got here is a specific, or they've got a more general instance of the chatbot, so it's not necessarily heavily weighting some of their content. So it's just interesting to see that. And I guess that's a good note too, that you can have sort of a general instance of the chatbot that is it's not gonna favor any particular data set, versus again for an institutional site. And again, it's your choice. You can configure these how you want. That will favor. I mean, you can. I guess a spectrum might be you can have it anything from it can just favor your local data, and then if it can't find anything, then as a sort of fallback, it'll find other resources outside of your state, and it can give a response based on that. Or if you wanted to entirely have the tool set up so that, okay, it's only going to give responses that are within my state, and if you can't find a state resource for that, then it's just going to say, sorry, I don't have any information on that. So we've got, really flexible setup on the configuration side. All righty. This is probably the most technical slide you'll see. I think I've got one other that's sort of technical like this. I won't get too far in the weeds with it. I will say I'll just bring up this term RAG pipeline, RAG, and RAG is retrieval augmented generation. It's more of a model than a like a data specification. It's a way of thinking about building. I call them domain specific chatbots or domain specific conversational AI. So when I say domain specific, I mean it's trained on a specific set of data, right? Many large language models. Again, when you look at general large language models and general tools like ChatGPT and Gemini, again, they're trained on the entire internet and maybe then some too. We actually don't know all of the sources that these large language models are trained on, as opposed to, as I mentioned, XtensionBot is only trained on extension data. So this gives you a sort of technical overview of what that looks like. Just a few quick points here. The embedding model we've got here really is a sort of a language interpretation model, if you will. Again, I think I mentioned intent before. Really good model for sort of judging intent based on a given question. Qdrint is the vector database we're using here. That's the retrieval sort of part of this RAG pipeline. All of the resources and data that we have in the system is referenced inside this Qdrint database. So when a question is asked, that Qdrint vector database is able to quickly retrieve relevant documents for that question. The re-ranking part is in there. That might happen based on localization or other factors. And then, of course, all of that is passed to the large language model, which then the answer or the response to a given question is then passed back to the user. I mentioned Ask Extension 2. So this feature we added this maybe six months ago or so now, late winter or early spring, I would say. We have an XtensionBot tab inside Ask Extension. So, for those of you might not know what Ask Extension is, again, a national question and answer system we've got. Anyone from the public can ask a question. It gets routed to a cooperative extension expert on the back end. So on the back end, an expert uses the system to respond. So now when an expert gets assigned a question, again, when they go to respond to the question, they've got this XtensionBot tab that they can click on. When they click on that tab, when they click on that tab, the user's question is sent to XtensionBot, and then a response is sent back. And then they're able to look at the response here. Again, the idea here is this, as I mentioned in one of the earlier slides, this idea of augmented intelligence. This is not there to replace experts and the responses they give, but hopefully just to augment the work that they do. And if you see at the top, we've sort of got a big fat banner that says, that basically the human is the one that's responsible for making sure that the responses are right. So again, the goal here is to just augment the work that the expert is doing. This is a good example of what I talked about earlier with this idea of value add sorts of things that again, we've made this flexible enough. I think we've built this system flexible enough so not only we can have sort of direct interaction tools like XtensionBot where you can chat with the tool, but again, under the covers, if you will, or behind the scenes, we have some APIs and other wiring that's in place so we can give other systems access to this data. And again, I don't know what this is going to look like down the road, but again, I would imagine a scenario where if an institution, an extension institution or group has a specific need and they want it to plug into the data that's available within the large language model, we've sort of got a model for that, or we've got some wiring in place that will allow that sort of thing. Other tools, when I say other tools, these are just other general tools within the Extension Foundation that we're using, not anything. These aren't tools necessarily that we're developing in-house, but just these are all some of the standard tools that we use: HubSpot, Zoom, Photoshop and the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite. We're sort of using various AI enhancements inside each one of those tools. So these are just some examples of those. We were I was on a webinar last week that the foundation gave. Nate, one of our associates at the foundation, gave that. Somebody asked about, waiting for leadership, waiting for permission from leadership to sort of use some of these tools. And my response was, don't wait. Now, of course, it's up to you to check with supervisors and institutions and other folks, but certainly you can start experimenting with these tools. I haven't seen any institution or anyone who's telling people not to touch these tools. So at the very least, you should start experimenting with them, because these, I can promise you, these tools you're going to see more of these tools. And if your leadership hasn't done it yet, they're going to tell you it's okay to use them. If not, they're going to tell you to start using them, because they're going to be a part of our work. So I would say, the sooner you begin to use them, the sooner the better. All righty, so this is our second leg of our stool that we talked about. Remember, there were the four legs. We've talked about the front-facing sort of apps and tools. That's the sort of front-facing piece. Data gathering is part of a lot of this back-end work that you never see. In some ways, this is the most important part of. Some ways, this is the most important part of the work we're doing, because I think that, again, the tools and services that are on the front end may change, but and I mean, the other thing is, how do we, not only the extension service in general, but for the foundation, how are we differentiating ourselves from what other tools are doing? Now, we looked at some examples of things like citations and localization, but we could see a time when these other tools may have that too, right? But I don't see a time when these other tools are going to have the specific data sets that we have now. Certainly, there's no doubt Google and Microsoft, these other folks, they've got access to all the online data that's out there, but they're not curating and sort of putting it all in one place and training a model, just on that data. So that's really what the data gathering part is about here. So there's really two parts to this data gathering piece. So we are working. The ultimate goal here, just to take a step back and give you the ultimate goal is to have, really, we'd like all extension data. Now, what does that mean? If you've been to various extension sites, you'll know that often data doesn't always look the same, and it's not always organized it's the same way in all sites. So that's the challenge with saying, okay, I've got an extension only, corpus of data, but we're sort of slowly working through those. I mean, most great technology is not sort of there's a whiz bang aspect to it, but a lot of it is just sort of hard work, right? And this is the sort of hard work part of it, right? The large language model and the training stuff we're doing, I would say that's the whiz bang part, the sort of magic part. There's no magic to a lot of this data gathering work we're doing. So this is happening on two fronts. Number one, direct participation from institutions, from land grant institutions. We've been contacted or we've reached out to and they've responded back, Oklahoma State, Oregon, Florida, University of Georgia, University of Tennessee. I can go on. We've got half a dozen, maybe 8, 9, 10 institutions that we're working with, and they are giving us data sets based on the extension data that they've got. We have a data specification in place. Again, David, if you're out there, you can maybe post a link to the extension page that has some technical details of that. It's a JSON format. Again, from more technical folks, that they will probably know what that means. And it's a specific specification we need to be able to ingest your data and train our large language model on your data. So that's the first way to do it. If you're interested in doing that, feel free to reach out to myself or David Warren. We'd be happy to hop on a Zoom call and just sort of give you the basics of what that looks like. So that's the first piece. And initially, when we started ExtensionBot and sort of the building of it, our goal was, the idea was, well, we'll directly work with each institution and they'll give us data, and that's the way we'll sort of build this thing. Of course, what we quickly found is, either due to apathy some institutions are just kind of like, nah, yeah, sounds cool, but we're not, we either don't have the time or the resources to do it, or some institutions they really don't have the time or maybe even the expertise to be able to create these data sets. As a result of that, we said, okay, we're going to need to, we're going to need to go out there and actually manually look at getting data from a lot of extension sites. So the way we're doing that is by crawling websites. Really, it's the same thing Google, Microsoft, and other large internet providers or companies are out there doing. We're from a technical standpoint, we're using Python to actually write code, and then Beautiful Soup is the name of the library, the coding library we're using. And yeah, we're writing crawling scripts for extension sites. Our preference is to work with institutions. I mean, number one, that's less work for us. We don't have to maintain a crawling script. So that's the first thing. Number two, it gives the institution maybe a little more control over what gets fed into extension bot, what extension bot gets trained on, and maybe not. But again, our goal, whether we work with institutions directly or whether we write crawling scripts, our goal, I'd say by the end of 2024, maybe spring of 2025, is to have all 50 states represented and have data sets from all the land grant, all U.S. land grant institutions. Got a note about data pipelines here. When I say data pipeline, so the other piece of this is we just don't want a one-time dump, right? I mean, that's good, but I mean, that gets old pretty quick, right? I mean, when I say it gets old, like literally the data gets old, right? So you've got, when I say data pipeline, the idea is, so whether it's the crawling scripts that we run on a weekly on a weekly basis, or the direct participation from institutions, we're asking them to create an endpoint for us that gets updated on a regular basis. Again, ideally weekly is what we're looking for there. But the idea is we're getting a regular update of data where we're adding any new content that's being added on extension sites, and then any content that's being removed or stale data is getting removed from our system. So again, the idea is that the data that extension bot is working with is all current and sort of up to date data. I'll talk more about that. We've got a sort of a separate system that's going to handle that for us, but I'll talk more about that in a bit. And the last bullet I have here is data is king. And that's really, I mean, again, I think that the work we're doing with extension bot is great. And that's really the shiny object that people see, and even I see, and like that's the fun part. But I think this data, building this comprehensive set of extension data, again, making sure it's up to date and it's reliable, is really going to be key to the long-term success of the project. Okay, how do you start? So if you do want to volunteer or sort of start contributing data to extension bot, these are just some sort of steps you can take. Figure out what content you've got and what you want to share. Generally, fact sheets and publications is the sort of stuff we're going for. The stuff we don't want, or, we could have a conversation about it, like a lot of 4-H things, events, calendar type items. A lot of websites have, for every event that's on their calendar, they've got a web page for it. That's not necessarily the stuff that we're looking for. I mean, a lot of that stuff gets old quickly and it's not really relevant. So ideally, again, you should be thinking fact sheets, publications. Those are that's sort of content that we're looking for. Of this content, which items, and again, yeah, of the content you've got there, which one do you want the bot to know about? Generally, more is better. I mean, I would say a good data set is probably 1,000 or more resources. We've got some institutions that have as little as maybe 300 resources there. On the high end, 5,000 or 6,000. Florida's probably our largest contributor right now. So more data is better. Again, that's general across, not just for extension bot, but large language models and these sorts of tools in general. More is better. I'm looking at the time. I want to make sure we leave time for questions, so I'm gonna sort of move fast through these last few things. But again, the big thing is here. You can sort of read through these last steps. Reach out to us. Reach out to myself. Reach out to David Warren, and let's set up a Zoom call and chat. Data ingestion process. Again, this is one of those more technical slides. I won't. I'm just going to leave this for you to look at. Happy to talk more about this or answer questions on it if anyone has it. Project Merlin. So I mentioned the data gathering part. Project Merlin's a sort of separate system that we're building. Again, the idea here is to have this, what Merlin is going to do is it's going to maintain those crawling scripts and endpoints for us. So again, the institutions that are voluntarily working with us, the goal is for them to have an endpoint that we can pull from. Merlin will pull that data in, and then all the crawling scripts we've got, Merlin's also going to handle the regular running of those crawling scripts, and then that's going to create a JSON dump. We have all that at one place. So again, the idea is to have a single system that's going to manage all the APIs and the endpoints for us. Also gives us the advantage of allowing institutions, we can create users and authentication for them. They can log into Merlin to view, they can view the last time either a crawling script or an endpoint was pulled. They can look at the data set. So there's a lot of advantages to having a single system that takes care of that chunk of technology or that chunk of the system. So these are the last two stools of the leg, are the education and training and the governance part. And again, this is like, what is Extension Foundation doing in AI? So the education and training is really what you're seeing now. Talking about the AI work we're doing. We've also done some AI prompting workshops, things like that. So just training sessions and just sort of trying to evangelize about augmented intelligence and how it can help the system and how it can help you do your work better. And then the governance is the last stool of the leg here. So the big thing here, the biggest sort of piece of this is the AI advisory board. We have a AI advisory board that meets monthly. These are folks from around the cooperative extension at land grant institutions to give us feedback on the work and the tools we're doing. Again, the idea here is to include stakeholders in the work that we're doing. So this is not the foundation trying to build, trying to tell you what tool you need and how to do it. But the idea is the foundation is here as a facilitator of this technology, but the cooperative extension, you all that are out in the field and the users are the ones that are helping us build these tools. Okay. I'm going to jump to questions now.
Great. Thank you, Mark. There's been some questions in the chat, and I think David, for the most part, has answered them, and people offering their perspectives and what they like to use. So I see a question from Jessica. AI advisory board is only for member institution. Is that correct?
So it's actually not. We've got it open. I mean, when we talk about member institutions within the Extension Foundation, we talk about member institutions or those institutions that are members of the Extension Foundation. To be a part of the Extension Bot project or to work with us, you do not need to be a foundation member, and the advisory board is open to anyone who wants to join. Now, I will say those contributing institutions, right? I mean, the idea here is we want folks that have some skin in the game to really be, the ones that are contributing to the development process of the tools and what they look like. So while you'd be invited to be a part of the AI advisory board, again, the contributing institutions, the ones that have actually shared data with us and they're implementing the tool on their websites are really the one that we're, those are the ones that have the skin in the game, and they're really the ones that have the ability to help guide the tool and where it's going. But I would say if you're interested in that, let me know. I've got a calendar invite that I maintain in Google Calendar. I'd be happy to add anyone to that invite. Let's see. Someone says, curious how you handle ethics and avoid bias in the data that trained the bot. Great question, and I have a good answer for you. I think a great answer. Ethics is one of the diversity of data and data sets is one of the things we're thinking about. We've talked about. We just added Tennessee State University, which is an HBCU. We've added their data We've got a data set from them. We've trained Extension Bot on that. So that's one of the things we're trying to do is reach out to HBCUs, 1890s, 1994s, which are tribal universities. We're trying to get data sets from those folks. We talk about systemic issues when it comes to whether it's racism or bias or other things. And, even on the technology side, you see it, right? The flagship land grant institutions are the ones that get all the money to do research, and hence they're the ones that have all the data and the data sets, right? So that's the challenge we've got is most of the data. I mean, everything we do here is being backed by data and data sets. So the challenge is for us in trying to include 1890s and 1994s is those folks just don't always have the same data that that the flagship land grant universities have. But it's something that we talk about frequently. We're reaching out to again 1890s and 1994s to make sure we've got their data represented also.
And may I, sorry, just unmute for a second?
Mm-hmm.
I think too that there's such an opportunity for community produced data to be included, and especially through our 4-H program. So just as a plug that we remember to make connections.
Yeah, let me say a few words about that. We go back and forth again. That's why the board is great and having diverse views. We go back and forth all the time about. I'm more of a research and maybe a scientific guy, but we have people that are saying, we really should include 4-H and community type data. So we're having conversations about that. My sort of default at the moment, I'll say, is that I want to include more. We're leaning more toward technical data, but we are starting. In fact, I think David might want to say a few words about that. We just got an updated dump from Oklahoma that I think is a broader data set, not just fact sheets. And we're going to do actually some testing just with the Oklahoma data set to see, if the results are good or if I don't want to say watered down. That makes it sound like that data is not important, but just not necessarily scientific data if that has necessarily a negative impact on any of the
I'm sorry, can you jump in there?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just to add on to that. I mean, so in general, we want to have, we want to offer answers from trusted sources, right? So the question is, what is a trusted source? And we're sort of within the realm of what Extension's knowledge base is. So to this point, so our starting point has been, as Mark mentioned, we said official publications, but we've kind of gone beyond that because we've also we also have content from a lot of to this, like from Florida, they've got 16,000 articles from faculty blogs, for example, and then there's a lot of great content there. So we're now testing. We're basically pulling in the entire Extension website for Oklahoma State because I happen to have a lot of contacts there, and we're testing. We're getting ready to start testing that, which includes because the 1,500 or so publications that we've had in the data set so far, but another 4,500 pages that are not. A lot of that's program specific content, some of it about 4-H, a lot of it about all of our other many 100+ programs. So what we're going to be testing is to make sure it doesn't deteriorate our answer quality in some areas. Well, because it's probably going to improve the answer quality in some areas, but maybe deteriorate in others. And we just want to have a full understanding about what broadening that data set beyond publications, how that affects answers. So, but it's a great point. I think the broader we can go, the more data, more content we can get from trusted sources in general will be the better the answers, and hopefully the lower our bias as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'll say we're experimenting with different data sets. We're just there's a group in the University of Georgia. They're associated with Extension Service, but it's not necessarily Extension anyway. It's food, health, and safety, I think. So it's a bunch of, it's a lot of food related to food prep, recipes, things like that. They've got a pretty substantial data set. We're gonna add that to the system, and then just do some testing and see, how well it does. I mean, from everything our AI engineer has said and shared. He thinks that even having less technical data in there is not, the large language models do a pretty good job of taking a given question and finding relevant resources for it. So we don't think it's going to be an issues. So most likely, and again, if you look at ChatGPT, Gemini, these large tools, they're trained on the entire internet. We all know the quality of data can vary greatly out on the internet. And those models do a really great job of giving good, relevant responses and answers. So I think I'm just trying to be, or I think we're trying to be cautious at the moment, but we're going to likely go from being, more specific right now and looking at publications and fact sheets to probably being more broad and bringing in, again, whether it's 4-H or community data, health and families, all of that content. Anyone else? Feel free to unmute and ask your question if you like. Just what's coming down the pipe. I mentioned that this is part of NTAE funding, so our year 2 funding. Again, Project Merlin I mentioned, which is going to be sort of a more structured approach to the data management part of things. I mean, I feel like we're in a pretty good place as far as ExtensionBot and just the usage of the tool itself goes. We're generally pretty happy with the responses that we get, so we're going to add, again, putting Merlin in place and having a more structured approach to managing all of the data sets. Again, is going to make sure we're going to have current data there, and again, this idea of removing any stale data. So looking forward to that. We've got some Ask Extension things we're going to do. Again, I don't think I touched on that specifically, but again, I mentioned Ask Extension, and that question comes into an expert. They can click on the ExtensionBot tab. Based on the location of the question and the group, we give the localization part, or the localization part of the algorithm kicks in and gives a location relevant answer to whatever the question that came in through ExtensionBot was. So again, as we broaden the data sets that we've got, as we get more data sets in, I think that's going to help more experts out. Anything else, David, in the next year we're going to be doing it's worth sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the couple things that are coming up soon is we're looking at changing our large language model in the back end to potentially Llama 3, which is from Meta, from Facebook. We're in testing, it's performing better, but not a lot better than what the tool we're using now, which is from a company called Mistral. But I personally am very happy reading sort of the Meta's approach to it. They really curated the heck out of their data set. So to focus on trustworthy data, which aligns with our approach, because not to get into too much detail, but so that there's some other development that also should continue to improve the quality of our answers. Facebook Messenger. We're experimenting with a Facebook Messenger interface. So not just a website embed, but something that could be used by extension services in your social media. And that's actually working, but purely in a test environment right now. So.
Yeah. Multimodal, I guess we should mention too. We're talking about that. We'll have to see where our funding goes. But when I say multimodal, I mean the idea of being able to add images. Right now, there's no image processing or anything like that. But you can imagine a scenario where you want to ask about brown spots in your lawn, and maybe you can add a picture too. And so there's a lot of good image processing, image API sort of tools out there that we could piggyback on. So we'll just, right now we're in this sort of mode of trying to be the best stewards of the dollars that we've got and sort of get the most bang for the buck. So multimodal and added the ability to support images is also something we're looking at. All righty. Well, I don't have anything else. Melanie, anything else?
Yeah, Thanks so much, Mark and David, for answering everyone's questions. I dropped Mark's email in the chat, so if you want to schedule any time to talk to him.
And have we got an evaluation that we want to share?
Yes, yeah, I put a link in the chat. It's the
Okay.
quick 4 questions. If you guys could take that and give feedback on this session and also what you want to see in the future, that would be great. So we make sure it's relevant and what everyone wants to learn about. All the resources shared today and the links and Mark's contact information will be sent out in an email. So keep your eyes open for that. If you would like to learn more, I know that David and Mark are available to talk to you guys, but besides that, it was a great session. We're right at the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone so much for joining and for participating and for Mark for sharing all this great information. So,
Thank y'all.
okay, see you next time. Bye.
Bye.